is an open community chapter in Doha. We are dedicated to information security. We do monthly meetup. As you know, we are very small community in Qatar as information security. So we have multiple chapter. We have like IC Square, OAPS chapter, Null chapter, and different chapters. So normally we do meetups every month, and we gather together. And the format is very simple. Someone from our side stand up and speak, and other will just follow. And then we do the group discussion. We discuss the problems, latest news, and latest threat in information security. So, due to Corona, thanks for Corona, what I like to say, we cannot meet physically. We do not have physical meetup last month and before that also. So this time we decided to do this virtually. So this is our first virtual meetup in Qatar. So I like to welcome you all again. Today we have two talks. First talk is by Mr. Abdul Qadir Sheikh on cybersecurity challenges for COVID-19, and the second talk is by Mr. Hafiz from Darul Shak. He is going to give a talk on ensure the cloud security with zero trust. So, without wasting too much time, I just like to start with Mr. Sheikh. So, I like to give a small introduction before he will start the session with you. So, a little introduction about Sheikh. Although everybody know him, he's very known figure in Qatar, and lots of almost I think lots of people who are in the session they already know Mr. Abdul Qadir Sheikh. But still, I like to tell a few words about him. He is engineer with 25 year of experience in cybersecurity with certificate like CISSP, and he worked as a leadership role in lots of organizations like QNB, TCS, IBM. He was also CISO for Vodafone Qatar. He is currently working in Capco, which is Qatar Petrochemical, as Chief Information Security Officer. I recently get chance to work with him, and I personally saw, lots of people from our industry come to him to, ask questions whenever they stuck somewhere. They come to him to solve the problems, and he's very generous. Whenever you go with problem, he always like to answer you, and he's always help you out. So, without wasting too much time, I just like to welcome Mr. Abdul Qadir Sheikh. The stage is yours, sir.
Thank you, Javed. I'm very humbled with your kind words. It's really an honor to be here. As Javed mentioned, this is the first virtual meetup that has happened. I was unfortunately not being part of it earlier, but I'll definitely be contributing as much as possible going future ahead. So before I start, just a quick etiquette to have this everybody muted, and I believe this is an audio only session, so which means that we'll only have an audio. The video will be disabled. Yeah, and question and answers will be taken as we go. Try to make it interactive, but wherever it is possible, you can put your questions on the text, and then we'll take these questions ahead as we move on. So we'll definitely ensure that the time will be best utilized. So the way I have planned this time is to have the 45-minute session and given 15 minutes for Q&A. If there are any Q&As which I could not answer in this 15 minutes, we'll definitely address this over an email or in different other channels. Thank you once again to give me this opportunity. First, just a quick disclaimer to protect everybody's interest, including mine. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are solely my own, not necessarily to my belonging to my employer, organization, committee, or any other group or individual which I'm associated with. And whatever this experience sharing that is going to happen is for academic purposes only. And one more thing we'd like to tell you that all this best practices or experience that I'm going to share is based on my own experience and my own problems that I have and challenges that I have gone through. Kindly mute yourself. I think it will be good to have a session. And the session is also getting recorded in case if you want to use this session for other academic purposes, you can refer to this. So the slides will be shared with you if anybody would like to have. Yeah, and we move ahead. Can we mute? Javed?
Yes, we request people to please mute the phone, mute the mic if somebody is on already.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that, I'm coming back to my just quick introduction. I have 25 years of IT experience, predominantly in cybersecurity. I've been in cybersecurity for a really long time. In my first career as a hacker to an CISO roles in various organizations. So I'm a Bachelor of Engineering, and I also have did my program in leadership and management from IIM Calcutta. I'm certified in CISSP, CISM, diploma in cyber law, MCSE, all those technical certifications which were required to have a wider foundation. So this is my contact, and that's me. So quick introduction. COVID, as you know, nobody needs any introduction to COVID-19. It's an unprecedented event in the recent history that human ever has known. For the last first few months, the way it has transformed the way that we work, the way we are adopting technology has been never unprecedented. It is the biggest driver in the digital transformation yet. So there's if you ask if there are questions which doesn't need any even brains to answer this question, which has been the biggest driver for transformation of digital, then COVID stands first. It's neither a CEO nor a CFO anymore. And work from home is a new normal. As you know, the new normal is a financial term which has been coined during the 2008 crisis, which basically tells you that now this is going to be a new normal. So the work from home is new normal till we settle things. I don't know how long, but there are several organizations which are looking at for a longer period of time. But this is going to stay for, and it has huge impact on cybersecurity. So this is a focus of our topic. We are going to discuss about the impact on cybersecurity and how we all need to apply the best of the knowledge and prove the return on security investment. This is the main topic of our discussion. So let's look into the changing dynamics, what is happening around the world with the COVID, and particularly emphasis on the employment and employability and other things. Facebook and Google extended working from home till the end of this year, which means that organizations which are probably one of the biggest employers in the world have made this as a norm till the end of this year and probably may go beyond. The Guardian has predicted that the permanent shift towards home working is something that we can look at it, and to endorse the same statement which Guardian has predicted, TCS, which is the biggest employer in India, which has about 450,000 employees, has made a statement that 75% of its workforce globally will be working from home by 2025. This is a TCS CEO statement that has come in. The unprecedented catalyst for tech adoption is COVID. There's no doubt. So everybody is using technology as never before. That there is a huge spike of traffic. There's a huge, usage of online tools, collaboration tools, and as well as cloud tools. Cyber physical systems will be accelerated. So the cyber physical systems, which are basically a kind of adaptation of AI, ML into robotics, are becoming a new way to handle the COVID situation and social distancing norm where humans are not able to connect with each other. So let's look into the attack trends, what is happening. And this is based on my research and out of many sites. It's not, I couldn't find a single site which has a consolidated infographics or graphics of about cyber attacks which is happening. So if you look at it, 500% increase in cyber attacks on the perimeter and cloud infrastructure. All the people are concentrated in working and work from home, and the traffic has been distributed, but still there is a 500% increase in cyber attacks on the perimeter and the cloud infrastructure. And another interesting number is 67%, about 600% increase in phishing attacks in just March alone. So April statistics is still yet to come out, but the fact is it has increased tremendously, and that statistics can be seen if probably in your email gateways and anti-spam and anti-phishing tools that you may, if you are looking at it. Google alone has blocked about 18 million coronavirus scam emails to its Gmail users. The malware distribution using coronavirus or COVID has unprecedented increase with about 100,000 registration of new domain names, which consists of COVID and or coronavirus as a keyword, and then luring people towards the phishing by using these new domain names. And fake apps has about 80% or 8 times increase or 800% increase of fake apps in the Google and Apple store, which are related to Corona or something to do with, which are imitating or imitation of this. That shows that a lot of people are probably spending their time in putting all their efforts and resources in preparing these apps. So increase in attacks on remote access and teleworking infrastructure. So this is probably seen in the recent attacks on Teams and Zoom and other places where privacy protection and other things are compromised. So these are some of the statistics that I could gather in one place where it could show you the magnitude of the attacks that are happening. And probably more reports will come in future, which will be much more insights and probably much more realistic. Now, coming to our focus on our topic is, I have documented all the best practices into areas that we need to focus on. So I could get us into 7 security areas to focus on during this pandemic situation. And from the technology side, from the cybersecurity, what are the different things that we can do? So first things first is to review information security policy to factor the altered dynamics. So what I have done in all these 7 areas, I'll be talking that my entire core of my presentation will be focusing on those 7 security areas. And then I'll be detailing them as we move ahead. If there are any questions on that, please feel free to stop me before I move to the second area so that the discussion can be continued. So the second area which I'm going to talk about is about remote access and the VPN configurations. Third is basically to protect users, or what are the different phishing or anti-phishing rules that you can optimize in order to stop the phishing scams that are happening, which are using the pandemic situation and the fear psychosis that is being tagged by attackers and crackers. Then shifting towards how the shift from perimeter-centric protection to data-centric protection. Securing the endpoints, both corporate and personal, and conducting security awareness training for remote users, and then tune your security monitoring capabilities to expanding IT landscape. So these are the 7 areas which I have grouped, and these are the areas that needs to be focused, and I'll be talking about those areas as I move ahead. The first thing which I talked about is the focus area number 1 is review information security policies and procedures. So the information security policies, as you know, are very important for the government to set up the rules and adopt various different regulatory requirements and compliance to ISO 27001 and other certifications that would be essentials, and also to incorporate the local culture as part of your policy. And these policies generally are developed and reviewed on an yearly basis, depending on the organization and other requirements. But the COVID or the work from home scenario in most of the cases are not being documented as part of the policies and procedures. This happens and because they did not give enough time, and we hastily move towards work from home for most of the organizations. So it is important to have those policies and procedures updated, and particularly the acceptable usage policies. And if there is any specific remote access policy that needs to be updated, this is to show the new requirements from the data privacy protection and the security to the norms that you have introduced as part of this. The second most important thing that is incident response plans and protocols might be obsolete or need to be adjusted. So the incident response plans usually involves a certain group of people, primary contact, secondary contact, and then you will have some vendors and others also to be part of those incident response plans. Now with this new incident response plans, the risk teams and the security teams are probably, if not geographically distributed around the world, but at least they are geographically distributed within Qatar, which means that they are not physically in one place. It is important that to have the incident response plans to update the new reflection of the new threat landscape, and as well as the risks that are associated with the use with the data. Another is to have roles and responsibilities, as I just mentioned, and you need to have a clear roles and responsibilities. Who's the primary contact? Who's the secondary contact? And alternative roles if primary and secondary is not available. And how? And don't miss out suppliers and vendors, because this is an important part of your incident response plan. Review all the documentation and importantly, conduct a road walkthrough with a careful watch of any problem areas. If there are any gaps exist and persist, you need to address those as part of your documentation. So the practice and policy both needs to be in sync. Consider using in many organizations may not have skill or maybe in the process of acquiring new skill or a competency is being developed within an organization. And this did not give enough time for many organizations as several recruitments were going on and the approvals were going on and people were ramping up teams. So if there are such situations, we recommend to use managed security services provider instead of trying to stand up with a new system, which is not probably possible with the supply of the hardware, software, and the vendors' presence. CISO is a part of, has to be part of a crisis management team. This is something that organizations may have as CISO or information security manager or a leader or an information security team, but they need to be part of the working group to provide the guidance on security concerns and business risk appropriate advice so that the business can factor those security requirements as part of this. Adopting a zero trust model, we have heard zero trust, which was coined in 2010, has been several, I'm sure must have gone through several documentation about zero trust. Zero trust is, as you know, is the way that how you provide access to data. My submission to you is that adopting a zero trust, which means that data-centric approach, which means that you have to know and protect your data, who's accessing the data and how to protect the data from people whom you don't know. We'll talk more about it as we move on. So this is focus area number one. I just take a pause. If there is any question that would I'm willing to take so that I can move to the next area so that it can be interactive, not just me talking all the time. So Javed, would you like to ask for some questions? If there are any questions coming on the text, if you can read out to me, because I'm unable to see the text.
Okay. Guys, please feel free to write. Hello. Guys, please feel free to write questions if you have anything on the text box, message box. So I am going to read the questions for Mr. Sheikh during the presentation. Till now, Sheikh, we don't have any question. Please proceed.
Okay, good. Thank you. We move to focus area number 2, review and remote access and access VPN configuration. So how do you assess a VPN configuration? As you know, a VPN has to be purpose-built. VPN cannot be a general VPN which is meant for everybody. So you have 3 types of broadly classified users. One is trusted, second is semi-trusted, and another is untrusted users. We know this classification from our careers. What is more important is to have a fine-grained control when you say trusted. Now, trusted users doesn't make completely trusted, because we are talking about zero trust model here. We need to know the device, we need to know the location, we need to know the user, we need to know all those um, fine-grained controls where we can control the whole profile rather than controlling just an access. So this is the way that we have to build an VPN. And let me give you an example how to segregate a remote access based on the trust level. So imagine if there is a VPN. So VPN are two types broadly. So one is client to site, and then another is site to site. Client to site VPN is best for employees because you are bringing a remote system as part of your network, which means an user environment and the operating environment collide with each other. This is a very a dangerous mix if for computers or systems which are untrusted, doesn't follow the corporate norms. That's the reason. Do not my experience is do not create a separate VPN or a VPN for the one which you have using for employees too, and mix up with other vendors and suppliers and other different types of users within the same VPN, because that would be leading to a kind of an lateral movements which would be dangerous for your environment. So a client to site VPN for employees, a privileged remote access or a PRA gateways for administrator and remote support. Like if you have remote support, which are firefighting IDs, which are generally OEMs or the vendors who are remotely located. So it is better to use privileged remote access gateways, which is basically a combination of a VPN and your technology, which is mixed with the privilege identity and access manager. So this both combined is called PRA. And what does it do? It records and audits every keystroke and mouse movement. It will have activity logged in. It can be integrated with your SIM. So this it can be used for privileged users. And the third thing that I'm recommending here is to use a site to site for partners or offshore tech support and development activities. Site to site generally binds an organization to our organization. And most of the contracts, NDAs, DPAs that exist are usually signed with the companies, not in individuals. And with this new way of working, there are several companies and attrition rate may be higher. People will come and go. So it is not a good practice to issue a client to site VPN for these kind of activities. So a site to site will bind an organization, and that organization can give a VPN to their employees, and they manage their employees, and that will bind you with the security norms that are required to uh, abided during any security incident. And, and finally, I'm talking about SSL VPN or secured browser with an MDM for non-company owned devices. Now the fourth category has been added because unlike in the previous situation where you had a client to site VPN with a company laptop, you were able to manage that client and you had all those security requirements, and it used to it's a kind of a device that is corporately managed, but it is outside your perimeter, and then you have control over it. But the scenario has changed. There may not be enough computers, there may not be enough PCs, or that the supply chain has been affected. So there are chances that users may be using their personal devices due to their convenience or due to lack of systems. So in such scenarios, it is better to isolate the user environment with the operating environment. So you will have an SSL-based VPN where you'll be a browser, and that's an and with Citrix and probably other uh, applications or application servers, you can bring a thick client applications as well. But now there are new technologies, like one, I don't want to endorse any company here during my talk, but there are several new organizations or products that have come in the market, which are built not just a plain vanilla browser based SSL VPN, but an MDM based browser. So what it means is an MDM, a managed device, as you know, mobile device management is a technology which is used to secure or to set up a norms or manage a device which is outside your perimeter. So over top of that, once you build a browser, so you will have a secure access. So which means you will not only able to manage the user based on his authentication, which is basically an MFA and those kind of things, but also you'll be able to manage the device, the access, and then requirements that are that needs to be fulfilled before the access is being provided. So this is the probably the best way to use and bring and to create a win-win situation where you'll have a personal system, whether it is a mobile device like an Android or an Apple device, or a home PC, which is non-standard, could be like a Linux system or an Macintosh system, can and actually interact with their environment safely and securely, and having a better control over it. And second practice, which I would like to say and share with you, is to assess the VPN configuration. Generally, our VPN configuration or obsolete will not probably created, for different types of users or different groups of profile. It's a time to review those based on the policy-based VPN associated with the group, using a route-based VPN to define the endpoint destinations, and as well as the VPN profiles like IPsec authentication and encryption settings and etc. And the least, last but not the least, is review the remote access users and connections periodic basis. So one of the practice that I would recommend is to have a daily alert of the users that have been logged in and their locations if possible, and reviewing those users will be a good practice so that you know who's accessing and what's the time of access. And also probably this can help your service desk teams to solve issues who are having an failure attempts, multiple failure attempts proactively. So this is probably a good practice to have this kind of thing. I'll move to focus area 3. If there are any questions, I'm willing to take.
Yes, we have few questions.
Yes, please.
So the question number one from Mr. Sharif.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so some privacy concerns. Maybe
Uh-huh.
employees are using their own computer now,
Uh-huh.
installing a EDR agents or tunneling internal traffic through VPN
Uh-huh.
may introduce lots of privacy issues.
Sure. So I get the questions. Yes, privacy is definitely an issue that we need to address. Using say probably if you are referring to a system which is unmanaged by the corporate and you are using your personal system, it is really important to have a privacy policy clearly articulated, displayed to the user, and then take his consent before he proceeds. So this is a kind of a banner similar to what you achieve when you download an app. So users are used to what kind of information, and definitely as a corporate, as you know, as part of your acceptable usage policy, this is definitely is being factored. What are the privacy norms that every activity within the system and usage of the system within the corporate is being recorded. It is being your websites are now monitored. So these kind of things are already factored as part of this, and it is important to remind those users who are is having a privacy concern and take their consent before proceeding to provide the access is utmost important. I hope this answers this question.
Yes, so again, Ahmad added a same question with the BYOD concept, and he want
Mhm.
to know when people are using their own computer at home. The same
Correct.
question to Mr. Sharif question.
So as answered the chef question, I would like to add when you said BIOD or void is which means that a managed device, right? So if you are using an email, if somebody is using an email on their mobile device, obviously he has to install the agent, and there is a acceptance norm that is being displayed, and he's accepting, and then you are displaying those consents. So what my submission to you is, please don't take the privacy for granted. It is very important to remind users, and that's the reason it goes back to my focus area number one is where I mentioned the first thing is to update your policies and procedures. Ensure that the acceptable policies reflect. and remind the users with the banners saying that this is being done, and take their consent whenever and wherever it's possible. So it is, we should not take this for granted. As a security professional, and the privacy norms, we have to respect. And that's the reason all if certain organizations who are compliant to GDPR must have already gone through this exercise, where you are required to even review the entire employee contracts, as I've done in my previous employment. So that all the employee contracts were reviewed with new clauses from the privacy, and and were reflecting in that contracts. And the similar things on your online privacy statement, similar things on your banners that should be displayed. I hope that answers the question.
We have a question from Sarah. Can MDM be integrated with site-to-site VPN as well?
Well, MDM is as a standalone technology. So it can be used as a standalone, and it can be integrated. So site-to-site VPN, to make this integration, obviously you need a single product or a single solution like Palo Alto, Fortinet, and those kind of solutions to make this as a single command and control to those, or the management console to manage these two things. So yes, the answer is yes, but and the answer is also this, that you can use this as a standalone, so not necessarily. In
So we have
interest of the time,
yeah,
I'll move ahead, and then I'll come back to this questions on MDM, because there is something more I'll be talking on
perfect.
this as I move ahead. Anything else? I can move to the next focus area.
Yeah, please go ahead, and then we can take questions if we have time more.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm actually talking in the focus area 4, which is especially on the endpoint devices. So I'll speak more about it. So focus area number 3 is to protect the users from phishing scams. So as you know, as I told you in the very beginning, there is about 600% rise of phishing scams or campaigns which are being lured with the fear psychosis that is pertaining among the users. So it is very important to have the phishing scams addressed as a serious threat to our organization, or any organization that you're working. So what is that we can do? Deploy an anti-spam and anti-malware filtering that detects malware, spam campaigns, blank senders, and other controls that are there. So if you have deployed, if not deployed, and you are, it is best to review those anti-spam and anti-malware policies. And this is the time probably is most important, because as I told you, and this is very known factor, that whoever is managing email systems within the organizations yourself, there has been a really a spike, huge spike in terms of the spams, and the number of spams that are there, spams that are being sent with various different techniques which your anti-spam engine may not be used to. So it is important to review those anti-spam. Wherever I say deploy, it also means please, wherever you have it, it is best to review it. Put this as part of your calendar to have all this review exercise that can happen during this time. And deploying a web filter to block the malicious websites and domains and links. So one of the challenges as any cybersecurity professional or the risk professional is that the probably a technology which will help to talk to each other. So most of the anti-spams are standalone, which are very popular, like on Office 365, ATP or Trend or McAfee. These kind of solutions are already there. But the web filtering solution will be like something like you have WebSense and all those products. The problem with these is they don't talk to each other. So ideally, and to get the best of these two worlds, I would see a solution which will talk to your proxy, communicates with your anti-spam, and then and as well as your any kind of an phishing training campaigns. So that will be a comprehensive solution, but we have to live with certain these challenges, because many of these technologies still not evolved, or we deploy multiple products for different purposes. So nevertheless, it is important to review those web filtering solutions, and ensure that the malicious websites are blocked and the domains and are updated, and the links are which are reported needs to be blocked. And this is the time probably a threat intel of sharing and collaborating with your friends, your colleagues, and as well as others who are working in this industry would help to fine tune this kind of. I think National SOC or National Cybersecurity Operations Center, which most of us must be part of those critical infrastructure, are already sharing the threat intel. But it may not be good enough. You still have to have those threat intel shared from various other forums and other places. Managed email security probably is a good soft. Several people have connected with me and asked me what if we don't have a security solution, or some advanced spam engines or anti-spam engines and other things. So it is most of this Google, Microsoft, and various Mimecast and various other solutions in the market provide a comprehensive email security solution. So those are a good start if you don't have an option to have this as part of your roadmap. The reason why I'm saying is that there has been an acceptance by the government of Qatar, although there has been little hiccups here and there. Office 365 is one of the largest adaptation of the cloud within Qatar, as we have seen trends. Some are in either in the pilot phase, some are at advanced phase where they have moved users, but this is happening to be a new reality of managed email security solution. Keep all the systems current and latest with security patches and updates, because if any email campaign or a phishing campaign try to exploit your vulnerabilities at endpoint, and particularly this is more sensitive when the link is clicked on a home PC or a device which is not managed. And this is where it goes to questions which were asked earlier, that how important is an MDM in such cases where we can ensure that there is an patching, antivirus and anti-malware, and the rules are optimized, are in place. And I'll talk more about educating your employees and conducting, but this is especially for phishing scenarios, to conduct a mock sessions. I think the technologies like or products like PhishMe and others usually provide this kind of creating a scenario. But nevertheless, if you don't have, there are some open source products which provide you these kind of templates, which you can use it for creating this campaigns. And the only factor is that you have to manually create reports if you are doing an internal campaign. But if you use open source and any industry tools, you'll get more insights about what is happening. But either ways, this thing will work as long as you get insights of where the education or awareness level of the employees are. And particularly, this is very important in the scenario where employees are distracted when they're working at home. You have work-life balance, and you may have not really a supporting environment for users, when they're at home. So these distractions could lead to, clicking accidentally or to these links. So it's quite important to conduct those phishing scams and campaigns to counter the phishing scams. So I'll pause for a minute and can take any questions with respect to phishing.
We don't have any question for phishing, but there are few pending questions from VP, and I like to use this time.
Sure.
Okay. So how there is very interesting question, like, how we can control the viewing of computer document on one employee having access of corporate information, may can show their information to the competitor on his own laptop. So it's like physical, if someone have physically access to his own laptop, and he can show the very confidential information to the competitor, how to control it. Is there any suggestion for that?
Well, that is really complex. The fact is that people can take pictures, they can take screenshots, they
Yes.
can share. There are so many different. So you're addressing something with the data loss or data leakage prevention, as people categorize this. This is one of the most difficult. Although there are there are techniques and things that are available to counter that, but they are not foolproof. There are the ways to circumvent it. The answer is that you can take a picture with a camera. Yeah, you can take a snapshot, you can take multiple ways, and if you somebody is physically showing it, I don't think there is any way that anybody could prevent this. The answer is definitely no, in my best of my humble knowledge.
Thank you, Check. I have another question from Shriju and Shehzad, the similar question. So I'm just
Mhm,
clubbing the both question.
mhm.
So there are lots of all the organization is using different method for remote access. Some are using
Sure,
RDP, some are using VPN, some are using different Cisco AnyConnect. But everybody is integrating it with Active Directory for authentication.
sure.
So the question here is, they want to know: is there any way we can monitor how much time a user work, how much application they access, what they done in this office time? So in short, they want to understand like, is there any tool or technology which we can use to do the uh, employee monitoring and what he done in this official time?
Right. One of the biggest challenge of work from home is this. Employees are trying to monitor their employees. Productivity is actually a major privacy concern. They are looking into on-screen activities. They are looking into what they're doing. What are the applications they access? The answer is definitely yes. There are applications which are currently built for. They are being used by currently by BPOs and KPOs who are working remotely. I know several organizations. I know several products which are in the market, which does very much that, where you sign in and but this is done for audit and for client or customer um, billing uh, purposes, but not exactly to monitor. But yes, there are some organizations which wants to monitor, but what it is done is that you log into a VPN, you log into AD, so there is an login time and log off time. That is one of the simplest parameter which people are using when he logged in, when he logged out. And there are profiles which are built in VPN, and those profiles you see which are the applications which are started and which are invoked. But as a solution, which is with the traditional VPN concentrators which are available, they did not have. But as an add-on, now this has become one of the products that are available in the market, which monitors the screen time as well as application access, the time spent, and all this. One of these applications, which probably if you are using Office 365, does exactly that, is called Microsoft Insights. It monitors in terms of how many emails you have sent to who are your frequent groups and all this. But that's done at an Office 365 alone. But if you have another applications which are there, so there could be a products which you can add it to those ecosystem, and then it can provide you those reports. But again, I want to remind you, what is the purpose? So depending on the purpose, if it is security is a purpose, or is it an employee trust is a purpose, or is it for auditing, or is it for billing? So the purpose has to be defined first, and the solution can be built on top of it. I hope that answers the question. I'll move to the next area. If there are more questions, I'll focus so that I ensure that everything is covered. So I'm going to focus area number 4, shifting towards data-centric protection. We are traditionally an organization, probably I've seen several people presenting the castle model, where you have the castle and moat model, where you have a moat around the castle, which, a trench or which is digged so that it protects. So that has been a traditional model, which has been, our security has been designed, although we call our defense in depth and other things. But the focus is never the data. We build the security around the data, not with the data or with. And this is probably a time to shift that approach towards a data-centric protection to ensure protect your crown jewels, which are the most important, and using data discovery, data classification. I'm sure many organizations must have started this journey of data protection and privacy for the last 1-2 years. And and by this time you must have made a list of those crown jewels where you have information with respect to PII, that is personally identifiable information, or sensitive private information, or it could be a information with respect to finance, credit cards, and all those already tagged, and you have already, if not, it is time to review those crown jewels to ensure that the most protection can be done. Please, one of the things that we learned, and we always continue to learn, not to have the same level of security across the organization. This will defy the very purpose of it. Protect your crown jewels. Focus on the areas which matter the most. We should, you cannot protect, as it is said, you cannot protect what you don't know. So it is important that you know. And building a zero trust in IT environment. I'm not saying a model. It is an, as you know, it's not a product or it's not a technology as most of the vendors are marketing like a zero trust. It's a concept that needs to be adopted to protecting data and by limiting the access. Identity access management. You cannot secure data or you cannot have data centric approach if you don't have a comprehensive identity management. You need to know who's accessing it. And probably this goes back to the question where you have said it is very cumbersome and complex to have AD as a single source of truth for everybody. This, if you look at it, most of the organizations make this mistake of creating these users, whether a vendor or whether it is an employee or it is an one-time user. They create this user on Active Directory because it's easy to integrate and manage on the VPN. So they provide this access. Creating an Active Directory is not a problem, but it is to having a different database for vendors or contractors and consultants is a best practice, separating them from employees so that you can have their different policies for them, different security policies. This can be also achieved. There may be debates in saying that this can be achieved through OUs. Yes, definitely you can achieve this through OUs, but having a different instance is a better practice. Yeah, the user radius or different types of services so that you can have much better and higher control on the users from the trusted and semi-trusted users. So the identity and access management should be fully integrated, and identity management should be integrated with the zero trust. And then you will achieve this zero trust as a concept. Protect data with the help of CASBs, and as you know, the CASBs or cloud access security gateways or brokers are new norms which will help us to do this access control, authentication, single sign-on, and various other user activities moving in and out of different SaaS cloud services which are available in the market. Not necessarily SaaS; it can be for infrastructure as a service and other models which are evolving these days. Privacy by design. I think there were some questions which were raised on particularly on privacy. Privacy by design is to ensure making a privacy as a priority when designing new products and solutions. Whether a product goes through every product goes through an evaluation cycle or a system development life cycle. At one point of time, it is very important to have privacy as one of the priority to ensure that this data is adequately protected, and understanding tagging the data, whether it is a PII. Specifically, this is very important for somebody who's working for service providers or financial organizations which are directly having the interaction with the users and having some very sensitive information. So that's my focus area 4. Is there any questions on it? And then I can move to the next area.
We have one question from Mr. Srab. Is there any best practice for ideal timeout for VPN connection, especially for client VPN, especially?
Right. That's a very good question, although it's very simple, basic questions, but people do ignore and set up in higher time limits in order to keep this active. But ideally, it is to, please, one thing, as I said, do not treat all data the same, do not treat every system, also do not treat every user the same. So again, where you have employees who are working on specific applications which need a higher time out, probably can be considered that. But and also this applies generally. I would say for employees, it should apply for your screen timeout. That's a Windows timeout or idle timeout should be applied to your. So if you ask me what should be the number of seconds or number of minutes, I would say the industry best practice is 15 minutes so which is considering all applications and everything optimized. And again, it may vary from scenario to scenario and application to application, and environment to environment, and of course, user to user. Plus 15 minutes is something that you could use as a, industry standard.
I have one more question for phishing, from phishing part.
Sure.
So, spam phishing in non-English language. So, what is your view on that and how to control it?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Can you kindly repeat that, please, for me?
Spam and phishing
Mm-hmm.
emails in
Mm-hmm.
non-English language.
Okay, all right, I understand. So if it's Arabic or French and other
Yes.
languages, what it is, I think most of the phishing tools these days do support, Arabic support in some cases, and also other Dutch and French and other popular languages across the world. But probably where these anti-phishing or anti, I'll be using a lot of terminology here, is where they fail to read is handwritten or something that has been taken from as a PDF where this is. So definitely no tools are currently available to read those kind of rules. But see, phishing is not just based on the keywords that is being used. As you know, it's various other parameters. Language could be one part of it, but if you look at it, there are other parameters where who's sending this email, what is the purpose, what are the contents, what are the keywords, what is the IP address, what is the what is his reputation, what are the different domains it is, what are the links it contains. So there are other uh, rules which will make the single profile, and of course the attachments, types of attachments, and different things. So I think in terms of rules of precedence, I think language will make a lesser predominance, although I understand there could be some word which could be spelled or misspelled in a different language and could be used. But there are other parameters which can be helpful for you to compensate those learning techniques which most of the anti-spam do not support. Okay, I'll take another question after I move to the other focus area, and probably this is where is probably most of the questions will come across, and this is where is probably most important area that needs to be focused. Securing the endpoint. What has changed? One thing that has drastically changed from the technology point of view is this area. The endpoint has become the new um, perimeter. Yeah, so your user who was controlled within or the endpoint which was controlled within and confined corporate network with the layer 2 authentication, 80.2 authentication, and then your proxy, and then so many layers of controls when adopting the defense in depth now suddenly get missing when the endpoint is exposed outside your organization. So how to bring those controls back as much as possible is to use technologies like endpoint security, which could be EDR, XDR, MDR, whatever you call it. That's a technology that is probably will be the most useful at this point of time. And to approach that is not, if you don't have an MDM solution, not a problem, but at least baselining an endpoint for a corporate usage is the minimum requirement that you need to do. This can be achieved through a process that is defined, or provisioning that is being held, or it could be educating your service desk or training them to help baselining an endpoint for corporate usage to defend against any breach involving an endpoint. Because now if you see endpoint has become the most probably the important asset, because the information that an endpoint, and particularly most of the endpoints which are used by finance and procurement and other things, has information that is equivalent to a data center. Only thing that misses is that it may not have a client to site or a client to server kind of application. But the fact is that you may have an entire dump of an Excel sheet or a CSV file which consists of all the information that is hosted in the data center. So if data center is where you put all the security, now it is time to relook into that, to put the controls or equivalent controls or similar controls on an endpoint. And that's the reason I remind back a zero trust framework, uses, this kind of technology to have a granular access to sensitive data. Um, for this concept, again, I'll remind this concept to apply it here. So, and providing an MDM solution is really a good idea, because this way you can control, like, the most of the MDM solutions in the market tells you whether you are using a jailbroken mobile or you are using a signed operating system or non-activated operating system or updated operating system, or it can say it doesn't have an antivirus. It can deny an access or help the user to comply to those and then provide the access. So this is quite an important investment, or that can be invested for best return that you can get out of any technology at this given point of time. So I would urge for MDM, comprehensive MDM solution, to have this at this point of time, to not just to have it for mobile devices, but to also the PCs, laptops, and other non mobile devices, because when they say MDM, usually people focus on a mobile device like AirWatch and other things, but that's not what I meant. We're talking about a comprehensive and MDM solution which adapts to all the endpoints in the market. Corporate laptops should have maximum security endpoint protection configuration. So having an endpoint doesn't make it saint. It doesn't help us to make it immune to attacks. Having a good configuration and what kind of activities are enabled and what kind of like example is forcing and proxy through a corporate proxy, so that you will have the similar controls that are essential when you are off LAN, not only on LAN but also off LAN. So that is in our case, which is work from home, as based on our topic of discussion. And probably the most important is to have the security, be cautious with the new corporate applications that store mission critical and personal information from personally owned device. So what is happening, one of the biggest threat that you have, and there is no way to control this with the solution that Microsoft provides by de facto, is to have an OneDrive linking with your personal drive, or downloading a file from OneDrive to your, when I say OneDrive, I'm talking about corporate OneDrive, to your personal laptop. That's the reason you need an MDM-based browser solution, which will help you to create a virtual environment, and this segregates from your user environment. So and there are technologies, and there are lots of technologies coming in the market which will help you with this purpose. But it's very important for us from the security and risk teams to be very cautious about this, and helping them with an RMS and different rights management solution or information rights management solution to compensate for those kind of an offline files. So generally, it is a tendency that you don't implement this kind of a security around the file, and that's the reason I refocus again on data-centric security. So build a security or identity with the file rather than outside the file or within a perimeter. That's my. I think I have two more areas to cover. How are we doing with the time?
Time is up already.
Time is up. So I will not pause now. I'll move with the six and seven, which will be quite quicker, and probably is something that we're doing. And then if the time permits, we'll take the next questions.
No problem.
Okay, the focus area number 6 is to conduct security awareness for remote workers. This is probably the best thing that you can use, and teams is what we are doing right now, is sharing our experience. What I'm talking about is similar such sessions which will remind users about the privacy protection and use of the company, and tell them that to use the systems with the due care approach in order to protect the information. So it's good to have a training or refresher training for most of them through Teams and other sessions to have those interactions with the consumer. If not, the least you could do is to have a Q&A and support a session for a large group of audience within your company uh, uh, to have this information sharing. So as I always say that this creates more distractions than usual. Shifting between work-life balance is one of the challenges. So expect the users to make these mistakes and errors and we have to help them to remind those best practices again and again. And doing and conducting an online security awareness sessions with the new, probably if you have introduced MFA or multi-factor authentication, importance of operating systems, patching, activations, antivirus. I know some of the companies have even provided their licenses for users who not have computers. They have given Microsoft licenses so that they can use home computers. And some have gone to the extent they have built images on home computers, which is corporate images, and then manages. And some organizations have even taken their PCs homes so that this current support of work can be continued. But there are it doesn't matter from cybersecurity side. We divide these systems into managed and unmanaged, and we have to tackle them. Okay, and this is a very important focus area, and I think this is one of the best things that we can do at this juncture. Finally, and the last focus area that I would like to is security monitoring. As I always tell you, you cannot improve security systems and you can't monitor. Deep visibility in the entire security environment is extremely important. There's no doubt that you need to have an entire security environment. So now with the landscape that has been expanded outside your perimeter, you have to look into those new landscape and the focus from where traditional focus where we are looking into NAC, proxy, web filtering, all those has now gone to a MDM, VPN. VPN, I know several organizations, including my own experience, we pay the least attention to VPN because I'm talking about employee VPN because there are very few users who are using it and few users who are adopting. Now suddenly there's a surge of users and a spike of connections coming through VPN. So it has become a really important piece of technology within your security systems. Ensure that the monitoring and tools and capabilities are providing maximum visibility. Train your SOC teams, train your monitoring teams. If there are any outsourced vendors whom you are working with, make sure that those are adapting to the new monitoring. Have different discussions, optimize the new rules, correlation rules, build new alerts, new reports, which will cater to the monitoring capability of the expanded or extended landscape that you have. So that ends and just quickly recap what I mentioned so that if there are any questions, you can. So the first focus area or the best practice that I would vote for is review your information security policies to factor the altered dynamics. Second is to test all the remote access and assess the VPN configuration. This is, as I said, is the need of the hour. Protect the users from phishing scams as due to the reasons that I have mentioned, there is a huge spike. Shifting the focus from perimeter to data-centric protection is a very good idea to make this as a data-centric approach and protect this data as it travels from home computer to corporate environment. Securing the endpoints, both corporate but also personal, has become a new requirement now. Conducting a security awareness training for remote workers or the people who are working from home is very important, and this should not be missed out. If there is not a possibility to bring the training into, you can send a recorded session. You can use your LMS. Other ways that we discussed can be done to educate the users. And finally, tuning the security monitoring capabilities to expand the IT landscape. So that ends my session, and if the time permits, I'm open for questions. This is my LinkedIn. You can post your questions even there, or if there are any other forums that you want to reach out to me, please feel to reach out to me.
Thank you very much. We really like to thank you, and I think this is very knowledgeable session. And I personally make lots of notes what I need to do for next 2 3 months. So you already given us work for like 2 3 months to complete, and more than that. So thank you very
Yeah,
much for the time. And as I believe, like timing is not actually helping me to ask you lots of questions, but still I like to ask one question only
sure.
before we let you go, and the another speaker will start his talk. So in this time, in this difficult time of COVID-19, the companies are cutting their budgets, and threat landscape is increasing, and the attack are increasing more. So in this difficult time, how we can actually manage to increase the budgets for, and how you are going to manage the information security of our organization?
Well, there are different. I'd like to take it into two groups. And the question is because some organizations are, in fact, increasing their technology budget in these times where they have not spent, and that means the technology budget also includes cybersecurity or security that is helping them to secure. And I'm sure if they are not doing it, they will do it later. But yes, on the other basket, you have pressure in terms of where your budget is being. But as most of the organization and mature organizations are going through this reprioritization of exercise, and if you are a CISO and the one who manages your own budget, it is time to relook into those priorities. If you have some priorities for this year and you have taken those budget, it is relooking into those priorities will be a good way of it. Convincing is as an art, which every CISO has to learn. And this is that the convincing has to be based on facts and figures, which means that you need to have a good amount of dashboard, security dashboard, or return on security investment dashboard that needs to be presented to your management on repeated intervals and showing what value we are adding, what are the different threats we are encountering, and how this is converting into a monetary benefit. The mindset is moving from, traditionally, because I'm in technology for the last 28 years, and I've seen whenever I've been part of it and we were traditionally looked at as a cost center. And that concept has changed. I think the COVID is, as I said, biggest digital transformation has helped us to say that now we are a profit center. The infrastructure cost that has gone down, whether in form of electricity, other facilities that have been provided, and that money can be now diverted to technology or technology that will help to give a secure operating environment. So this is going to stay. I mean, there must be budget which has been allocated for physical facilities of a huge building that has been there. So now I'm sure the 10 to 20% is of that has been only utilized. So look at the services, catering services. Look at the cleaning services. Look at the other, access, different parking, electricity, those kind of things that has been gone into significant saving of the organization from the admin cost probably can be directed to technology. This is what is my recommendation if there is any finance audience part of this discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheikh, for being with us and the knowledgeable session. Uh, thank you very much. And I like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Hafiz. Uh, I request Mr. Hafiz to start sharing your screen. Meanwhile, I am introducing you.